Hi, welcome to the iCook channel. I'm your host, Pete Goffe-Wood. So, what is the iCook channel? It's a fantastic new initiative that's going to help restaurants and bring restaurants to you in your living room. The idea is that you will now be able to click and cook alongside your favorite chef as they produce their own signature dishes right in your kitchen or your living room. A fantastic new initiative. I'm so excited to be part of it. And tonight is going to be filled with fun. And of course, the chef who's going to take us through it all today is none other than the fantastic Franck Dangereux. Franck, how are you, my man?
Awesome. Thank you, bud. Glad to be here.
Yeah. That's great stuff. Franck and I, for those of you who don't know, are neighbors. Franck's in Noordhoek and I'm in Hout Bay, but due to lockdown, of course, we're both in our own homes and cooking to you through the internet. So, but before we get stuck into tonight's entertainment, just a couple of house rules, for want of a better word. First of all, we want this to be as interactive as is humanly possible. So please send us messages through Twitter or through YouTube. If you're using Twitter, you can contact us through the hashtag on your screen, hashtag iCook channel, or simply write comments on your YouTube feed, whatever the questions. How are we going about doing this? Any questions for Franck on process or ingredients, where we get our hair done, whatever you fancy asking for us. In order for this to be interactive, you've got to ask us questions, and we will endeavor to try and keep you abreast and inform you whatever else you need. But before we get started, we also have some thanks to give out. We have a couple of sponsors who've made this fantastic initiative possible. Firstly, to HiChem, and of course also to Haute Espoir, let me say that again, Haute Espoir Wines in Franschhoek. But of course, our main sponsor who's bringing you today's program is Food Gurus, a fantastic new mobile app that is going to revolutionize restauranting in South Africa. Their site goes live on the 16th of June, but if you'd like to get a taster of what they're about, you can check out their website, foodgurus.ai. And so, today's episode is brought to you by Food Gurus. Right, so back to the action. So Franck, Franck and I go way back. I first tasted Franck's food in 1998, back in the good old days at La Colombe when it was still on Constantia 8. And over the years, I've been very, very fortunate. The two of us have become good mates and have had the opportunity to cook on numerous occasions before. But I have to say that due to lockdown, this is the first time we've ever had to do it over the internet. For those of you who want a little bit more information about Franck, he is now running the fantastic food barn in Noordhoek. He is also recently voted by FHM magazine as the sexiest chef in Africa. So Franck, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what's happening in the food barn in Noordhoek.
Pete, actually, the restaurant is still closed, unfortunately. But my recent sexiest man status has elevated me to new heights. And as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm actually not wearing anything down there. I'm
like it.
But no, we're pushing on, man. We're pushing on. We've got the deli open, and I'm just grateful that we're able to do some. You know, and we cook, and then cooking, this is blowing my mind. Actually, I'm in my kitchen, you're at your house in Hout Bay, and then we're doing this with a whole bunch of people. It's crazy.
It's completely crazy. And just let me fill you in, folks. This is how iCook channel works. So you can go to web tickets and you can book a ticket to cook with your favorite chef. We'll have a series of those over the next coming weeks, and Daily Dish will deliver a box of ingredients to your door. Everything you need to cook the dish, the single dish of the chef, and then you will click on, as you've done now, 6 o'clock in the evening, live on YouTube, and you'll be able to cook with the chef in your front room, in your kitchen, at your braai station, wherever it is that you're watching or cooking. And that's it. It's revolutionary, it's new, it's interesting. It's the first time we've had this, and I think this evening is going to be huge amounts of fun. So Franck, tell us, what's on the menu for tonight?
Okay, Pete, I'm doing a warm salad, and it's actually called a tagliata. It's a beautiful big rocket salad with glazed turnips.
Okay, there we have it. The dish is Ribeye Tagliata.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So just run that through again.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying it's a warm salad. It's called a tagliata. So I'm using a beautiful piece of beef ribeye, and the idea is you put a big salad together. I'm going to use tonight some turnips, which is one of my favorite winter veg, and these are so beautiful. So we're going to glaze the turnips. We got some cherry tomatoes, some mushrooms that we're going to grill, and then it all becomes a big salad that you put on the table, or you can also plate it in 4 individual plates, depending on how fancy you want to get.
Okay, fantastic. So at this stage of the game, I'd like to welcome the ticket holders who bought themselves a box. For those of you who are watching along, this is the bit that you miss. This is the special bit. You too can join in next time, and your box will be delivered and you'll be able to cook along. Unfortunately, you're going to be just like me. You're going to have to salivate from this side of the screen, because while we have loads of box holders who are cooking and Franck's cooking, I too am sitting with a glass of wine and a stale cheese sandwich. So I'm just going to have to imagine how fabulous the food is. Okay, Franck, I think let's get stuck in. Those of you with the box, we take it as read that you're ready to go. Your ingredients are all laid out. We've got this fabulous turnips. We've got mushrooms, the ribeye steak, rocket. There's good parmesan, all of the dressings and fixings. What you will need, however, which isn't in the box, is some olive oil, some salt and pepper, and of course, some all-important butter. Are there any particular utensils that we're going to need tonight, Franck?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, the basic utensils we need, I think it was sent in the mail. So we're basically going to need, for those of you who have a cast iron grid, so I'm going to show them on camera too. So we've got a cast iron grid here to sear the meat. If you don't have a cast iron pan, it's okay. You can just use a normal pan with just a little bit of oil in it. This beautiful pan I'm going to use for my turnips. And then I've got a regular oven tray that I'm going to use for the mushrooms. And then knives, I'm going to need a nice long blade, very sharp for my ribeye. I've got a good old paring knife that I actually got from my dad. I've had it for forever. It's an ancient knife and it's so sharp and beautiful. And most importantly,
a quick question about your knife there.
Giant.
A quick question about your knife there, dude. That looks like it used to be a lot longer. It looks like it's been kind of ground down over the years.
Yeah, so basically, it used to be about this length, and I mean, and then it was also quite deep like that, and it's just been sharpened and sharpened and sharpened, and now it actually shrank to about the tiny thing. But it's so great. I love the handle. It's absolutely magic.
It looks like an old French sabatier.
Yeah, no, it's actually not even a sabatier. I don't know what it is. There's no brand on it. It's just well made. You know, it's like one of those well-made knives.
Yeah. Well, I think the knives are like any, if you spend a kit on the knives, they last you a lifetime. And in fact, as we see now, generations even. Well, Franck, I think
totally
everyone has got the ingredients right out. I think there is, I think it's time for us to start cooking. Just remember, folks, send us some questions. If you have anything, remember that hashtag iCookChannel on YouTube or on Twitter. Remember, send us questions and we will try and answer them as best we can as we go along. Franck, I think it's over to you. Let's get into some cooking, my man.
Okay, cool. Yeah, cool. So first, guys, so if everybody out there who is cooking with me, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we're doing this. It's absolutely crazy for me. And I think I know a lot of you, we send that out to a lot of friends. So friends of Dodok and the Food Barn, and some of you guys out there, I believe we have somebody watching us in San Francisco. We're going to start with the turnips. So turnips, it's a beautiful autumn/winter veg that I'm going to use in that salad. So it's quite interesting because when I actually use the paring knife to slice the turnips. Because it's quite an odd vegetable. It's got almost like two skins. It's got quite a thick skin. So if you use a peeler, you're just going to have to run it twice. Otherwise, you got almost like a slight leathery skin on it. So you just slice your turnips liberally, like that.
Sorry to interrupt, Franck. If you were to use those fabulous baby turnips you can get this time of year, would you also have to peel those, or could you use those whole?
So, yeah, you can use them whole. If you use baby turnips, you just wash them, and you can use them whole. But because we're going to glaze them, you would have to remove the green. If you were just blanching them or boiling them in salt water, you could leave the green on. But the glazing is, it caramelizes, so it's actually better to remove the green. But yeah, if they're young and tiny, you can actually leave the skin. The skin will be also super tender.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so everybody should be doing this. And then while I'm on the turnips, you know, some people might not get turnips or not like turnip. It's actually of the family of the radishes. So it's not as burny or it doesn't have that same bite, but it has that weird kind of tang winter vibe to it.
Yeah.
And if you want something just sweet to go into that your tagliata, into your salad, you can also use butternut or you can use sweet potato as well.
Okay, and then glazed as well, because we have a question from Jenny and Constantia who says she's not only fond of turnips, what would be a great alternative? So yeah, sweet potato, butternut, anything along those lines. Butternut would be that would graze really well. They have the same sort of starch content, don't they?
Absolutely. Okay, so now can you see my board? Right, let's get back on the board. I'm going to slice the turnips, and I'm actually going to turn the heat on my flame on medium heat, and I put the pan on, and then I'm going to slice my turnips. So basically what you're doing now is you're doing nice slices of about half a centimeter.
Oh, so they're quite chunky.
If you look at that, yeah, they must be. You're looking at half a centimeter. That's the idea, you know. You want them to take a little while to cook, but you also want to have some kind of meatiness to it.
Yeah.
Like
just having a look at your piece of ribeye there, Franck. I'm a bit of a meat man myself. What's that, about a 400-gram steak you've got going there? That I can put that down on my own. Is that going to be enough for 4 people?
Yeah. So look, this is not even though we're using beef and it's a meat dish, it's actually not a meat main course dish. It's just a big winter salad. And once I'm done with it, once you got the turnips cooked, once you got the mushrooms, once you got the leaves and the cheese and everything, it actually is quite it's a lovely size main course, you know. By all means, if that's the only thing you eat, probably it'll be nice to serve a nice loaf of bread or a nice big ciabatta with that, or or you could have a little starter, something cheesy to start, and then maybe plan a dessert. So it's just it's a lovely size main course.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, so I've got the heat on. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in my pan.
Okay, I've got a question here, Franck, from Jimmy. He says, "What's the most important utensil in your kitchen?"
Alrighty.
Franck, can you hear me?
Yes.
I got a question from Jimmy.
He
says, "What is your most important utensil in your kitchen?"
I'll be tempted to say my corkscrew to open the wine, but I mean that's probably the second most important.
Correct answer.
My most important utensil. It has to be my knives, because you can kind of like make do with just about anything, you know. Even when you go cook at somebody else's house, they always have a pan that will work, or a pot that will work, or something that will work. But if the knives are not sharp and they are terrible, it's really not fun. It's a disaster.
I agree with you. I always have a knife in the boot of my car, a couple of knives in the boot of my car, because you never know when you're going to end up cooking. And it always happens at everyone's house. They go, "This is the sharp knife. It was sharp when they bought it 5 years ago, and it's never been sharpened since." Or you have to cook for 12 people using one of those curled cheese knives. No. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly.
Okay, cool. Hey, so guys, Pete, so we've got the turnips going.
Great stuff. So I can't tell what's going on. The caramelization is going to be cool.
Okay, cool. So now at that point, I'm going to put a little bit of seasoning on it.
Now, when you cook Franck, do you use salted or unsalted butter?
And a little of pepper. Sorry, say again?
When you cook, do you use salted or unsalted butter? Do you have a preference?
At the moment I use salted butter. I've actually, when I first came here to this country from France about 30 years ago, I only used unsalted butter in my cooking, and I kind of I've learned to work with salted butter, and I really love it. You kind of adapt. I really enjoy it.
Cool. Okay, no. It's an interesting question because unsalted butter is quite. It's significantly more expensive than salted butter, and it's one of those things. It's always a thing that people ask. Oh, it calls for unsalted butter. Can I use salted butter? And I always say to people, yeah, if you're going to use salted butter, just taste the food before you season it, because you don't want to overdo it. So rather, because there is salt in there, particularly if you're making something like a hollandaise or something where it's an emulsifying sauce. Make sure you taste the sauce first before you season it if you are going to use salted butter.
I agree. Okay, so listen. So we've got the turnips going. So what you do with the turnips, you must cook them on a gentle medium heat, and you want to cook them on. You want to give them a little bit of a color on the one side, and then what we'll do is we'll turn them over on the other side and give them a bit of color. And at that point, we'll add a little bit of sugar to that. Okay. And then a little trick that I use is because you want them to be cooked right through. We'll put about a half a glass of water in it, and then we'll let the water evaporate completely. This will all take about 20 minutes, and by the end of by the time the water is gone, they'll be perfectly cooked.
Yeah, that steam will just help to speed up the cooking process.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Okay, we have
Okay, so in the meantime, I should maybe get.
Sorry, Franck, just to interrupt you. We have a question from Kimberly, who was probably just joined us, maybe wasn't listening earlier. Kimberly, if you don't like turnips, something like butternut or sweet potato would work just as good in this recipe. You could substitute straight amounts, process, just use sweet potato or pumpkin. Well, not pumpkin, but specifically butternut.
Yeah, pumpkin as well.
I find pumpkin a bit, okay, I suppose it's also personal preference. I find pumpkin a bit watery, and it doesn't caramelize as much as it softens and is nice and rich and warm, but I find it doesn't caramelize. It doesn't have that starchiness that caramelizes like the turnips and the butternuts do. The butternut does.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so now we're on.
Grab your mushrooms onto the mushrooms, and you must keep an eye on your turnips as well. I'm going to go back to the turnips just now because you don't want them to get too much color. But so if you take your oven tray and onto the mushroom, you just basically cut the mushrooms in nice, thick 1 centimeter slices, and then you just basically lay them down.
I can already see about when you were saying about the salad being substantial enough. This is, with this chunky cut, this is going to be quite a substantial dish. This is not like thin slices of mushroom and a dainty. This is going to be quite a substantial, wholesome salad.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's got like good chunks of food on it, so it's lovely. So slice the mushrooms. Oh, I'm gonna just take a second to turn the turnips. So let's go look at that.
Okay.
So now they're getting a little bit of color, but I don't want them to get too much. I would rather caramelize them later when I got the sugar in.
Yeah. Because I think if your pan is too hot, you're going to burn them initially, and then turnips have an inherent bitterness, and if you burn them, that bitterness is just unforgiving.
Can you see this good? I mean, can you see the color?
Yeah, no, I can start to see the little golden brown from there. It's starting to look very, very tasty.
And can you smell as delicious it smells?
I can. I'm getting this lovely waft straight off the pan. I'm having to keep myself busy with the red wine, unfortunately. That's all I'm getting this evening. I think even my toasted cheese sandwich is congealed I should have eaten it while it was hot earlier.
Shame, man. Okay, cool. So guys, mushrooms on the tray. What I'm going to do two things. For those of you who have a cast iron pan, which is one of those, I'm going to put it on the burner and I'm going to put it on medium heat because this actually cast iron takes a good 10 minutes to heat up. So I'm just going to put it. I'm going to put it on
a quick question
at the back so you can start heating up.
This is from Julian. Sorry, Julian in Sea Point. Why is it important to use something like a cast iron pan?
Okay, so it's actually the cast iron. Basically, what it does is it retains a lot of heat. So when you put something to cook on it, it keeps packing a punch. You know what I mean? So that's why it normally makes beautiful lines. It makes beautiful searing lines on the meat. The one trick, the one very important is that you must never put oil in it. You must always put oil or fat on the actual ingredient, the meat or the fish that you're going to put in. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of having cooking on top of the raised bits that are very hot. And for those who don't have a cast iron tonight, like I said, a good heavy bottom frying pan, plenty of heat, a little bit of oil in it. If your meat is nicely seasoned, it'll work beautifully. So I think that the big secret here. Yeah, go.
So a cast iron pan could just be a flat cast iron, like a skillet. It doesn't have to be a ribbed pan. It'd be all right if it was a flat surface.
It's fine as long as you got something that's got a reasonably amount of thickness, so that you can actually it packs the heat. There's nothing worse than putting a piece of meat in a pan that's going to cool down rapidly, and then the meat ends up boiling. That's what you don't want.
And also, you can always tell for those of you folks, when you look at a solid pan, what it does is it doesn't buckle. So you get an even heat throughout the base of the pan. You always see those, we've all had them, those pans, and they don't sit solidly on the thing. And so you get little hot spots. Yeah. You don't get a solid uniform heat across your pan. And so it's going to burn in places and it's not going to cook elsewhere.
Absolutely. Shall we go back to the turnips quick? Because I'm going to add some sugar to them.
Fantastic.
Okay, so here I am. So guys, grab a little bit of sugar, and you're looking at about 2 teaspoons of sugar there onto the turnips.
Cool.
2 teaspoons of sugar, and I'm going to give them another turn. So this time now the sugar is going to be in contact with the pan.
Could you use a brown sugar, like a treacle sugar or demerara sugar, or does it have to be white sugar?
You can use, yeah, absolutely. If you want to use a darker sugar than white, I'm actually using brown sugar.
Okay, cool.
So absolutely. And then at that point, I'm just going to add a little bit of water. Like I said, a little glass, half a glass of water, not even. Just to kind of like make a little layer of water. Can you cheat and cook the mushroom in the same time?
Okay, we have a quick. I think I'm going to even answer that. You carry on. I'm going to answer that one. I think you've got to be careful of that because what you want is for your turnips and your mushrooms to be ready at the same time. And if you're going to take your turnips out and then put the mushrooms in, you're going to delay the recipe and you're going to have to keep the turnips warm while you wait for the mushrooms to cook. So it's best to cook them simultaneously. That's why Franck's doing them under the grill.
That's it. You're absolutely right. So, okay, talking about the mushrooms, let's proceed. So the mushrooms are sliced. They're on an oven tray. And I'm going to put salt and pepper on it. Just on one side, it's enough. Just a bit of pepper. Don't go too crazy on the pepper. A little bit of salt. And then I've got here the herbe de Provence.
And what Now, if someone didn't have herbe de Provence, Franck, what herbs are they? Just a matter of interest for us mere mortals.
So So it's basically a combination of thyme, rosemary, oregano, and sometimes in Provence we put a bit of lavender in it as well, it really gives quite a lovely touch. But everybody's got Herbs de Provence because it was in your box.
Yes. No, but I'm thinking if someone is watching this who hasn't had the box, who's thinking of doing this later and trying it again, they may not have herbs de Provence, but they'll probably have a pantry full of dried herbs, and I'm sure they've got everything except the lavender.
Well, what else was in your box is that bottle of Gentle Giant from Rob Armstrong, remember? Have you had a glass yet?
Indeed.
Because it's absolutely solid. 2014, it's so smooth, it's delicious.
I think I'll join you in that. It's going down very nicely since I don't have dinner waiting.
I think everybody must just put the knife down for 1 second, fill up a glass of wine, and join us in we're all at home. We got nowhere to go. So we can drink. And we don't have to wear a mask, which is even better.
That's it. So we do have a question. The ingredients, should we halve the ingredients for 2 people? Our pamphlet says it serves 4. That's an interesting question. If you've got the box for 2, the recipe card is for 4. So I would imagine that you probably use up all the ingredients because we didn't print 2 recipe cards. That'll be why it is. The ingredients you've got will be a box for 2, so use all the ingredients, but the recipe card itself was printed just for 4.
I think you're right about that. So that was a very pertinent question because there must be quite a few people out there.
Thank you, Vicky. That was a great question.
Are in that situation. So that's cool. Can I just check that everybody's got the mushrooms on their tray, that everybody's got the grill oven, the grill, which is the heat coming down on full, and you've got a shelf in your oven, which is a little bit above halfway mark. This is where I'm going to put the mushrooms. So now, last thing I need to do to my mushrooms is drizzle a bit of olive oil.
Oh, you've got some olive oil. Okay, that was my next question. Oh, you've got some olive oil or something. Fantastic.
Yeah, so people, and you must have olive oil. It's just one of the things you have to have at home. At any point in time, you need olive oil. It's like, I mean, I don't think I could live without olive oil.
I think if you're tuning in to watch this program and you don't have olive oil in your kitchen as standard, then I don't know, go and watch some drag racing or something because you shouldn't be here.
Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to put heat up, get onto the tomatoes. Okay, so real easy for the tomatoes. Grab your tomatoes, grab a small knife, and we can get started. So basically all you need to do for the tomatoes is you quarter them.
Okay. I think it's important. One of my pet hates is when people put cherry tomatoes in salads and think because they're small, they don't have to cut them up. They're very, very difficult to eat whole, and they end up bursting in your mouth and going all over my shirt. And I think it's just a sign that you show a little bit of love and respect when you take 5 minutes to actually cut them up into bite-sized chunks rather than just chucking them in whole.
Yeah, Pete, I agree with you. Having said that, when if you were to roast them whole, then they are fantastic because obviously the skin bursts and then they kind of pop and then they become like jammy and delicious.
In fact, okay, cool. With the salad, with the salad as it stands now, you could probably also just put those cherry tomatoes on the tray with the mushrooms. If you wanted something, if you're really getting cold and you wanted something warmer, that would work as well, wouldn't it?
Completely, absolutely. Listen, I'm just going to take 1 second and give it a little clean. Basically, with this whole COVID thing now, everybody is freaking out and you have to be really careful. So we are sanitizing all the time, especially in our professional kitchen. We like quite out there, sanitizing the surfaces. So
Well,
got the
it's
stuff
actually interesting.
and do it.
Yeah.
Hey,
I think it's actually interesting because what people fail to realize is how sanitary kitchens are in the first place. We aren't able to work even pre-COVID without sanitizing our boards, cleaning our utensils, cleaning pans, washing hands, washing surfaces. It is so easy to get cross-contamination, food poisoning, that it's entirely, we've been sanitizing all the time. So this is second nature to professional kitchens for those of you worried. But this is what we do.
Yeah.
If I tell you how many times a day I wash my hands, it's ridiculous. I've got layers of skin that have just gone down the sink because the amount of chemicals and stuff I put in a normal day. Okay, so we have a question here from Philippe. Have the mushrooms gone into the oven? Did he say heat up? So yes, we wanted to put your grill on in advance, and the mushrooms are in the oven. Well, now taking them out. Are they in yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so we've heated up.
They haven't gone in. I just the grill.
We just heated the grill up.
I want my grill to be really hot.
Okay, so we've heated up the grill, but the mushrooms haven't gone in just yet. Cool.
No, so basically, let me recap. So I'm just doing a recap so everybody knows where we stand. I've got my turnips, and my water is almost evaporated, and the turnips have had salt, pepper, and now sugar, and they're browning gently, and they are becoming soft, which is exactly what we want. I've got my grill on, ready for the mushrooms. The mushrooms will be virtually 3-4 minutes under there. I've got my griddle pan or my frying pan on the heat, ready to receive the meat, and I'm going to season the meat. Our tomatoes are ready. And basically it's just going to be a case, once the meat is cooked and rested, to slice up and dish. So it's really easy.
I think just an important question, Franck. I see you had your steak out on your workstation all the time. Is it important to take it out before you cook it, or do you must it come straight from the fridge, or is it best to bring it up to room temperature?
Sorry, the meat. Are you talking about the meat?
Yes.
Definitely out of the fridge, Pete. I mean, yeah, definitely out of the fridge. You want the meat to be almost at room temperature when you cook it, especially if it's a thick piece of meat. Then if it's ice cold, it'll just take that much longer for the heat to go through. So that size, that thickness, I just need a really hot griddle, and I really want it medium rare, so it's going to go really fast. I'm going to give it a good sear on each side, and it'll be perfect. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil on the meat itself. I'm going to paint it with my hands. So everybody can do that. Don't put too much. If you put too much, what's going to happen is it's going to fill up the grooves between the griddle pan, and you really don't want that.
Sorry, Franck, before you continue,
salt and pepper.
We have a question from David, who says, what is the best pan to use, stainless steel or non-stick? I can answer that while you carry on. Stainless is much better than non-stick. Non-stick is great for cooking eggs and omelets. The problem with non-stick is, because of that layer of Teflon, it's not a great conductor of heat. So a stainless steel pan will get much hotter than a non-stick pan will. And if you're cooking steak, you want the heat. You don't want the non-stick. Okay, so Franck, tell me a little bit now again. Easy. A lot of people say that you should only season your meat when it's in the pan or after it's cooked, but I see you're seasoning it before it goes in the pan. Why is that important?
So basically, it's very important to season the meat before it goes in the pan, because when you start cooking the meat, all that seasoning is going to start penetrating the meat. Obviously you can't do it too soon. If you do it like an hour before, then you're going to basically start a curing process with the salt onto the meat. So it needs to be done a few minutes before you cook. And the bottom line is, if you were to not season the meat beforehand, you would, when the pan hits when the meat hits the pan, it basically seals
Yeah.
the outside. The protein cooks and caramelizes. And then you would have to put so much more seasoning on top, just on top, to season just the outside. And it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. How are those turnips are looking super sexy there, Franck? Are they caramelizing nicely?
Okay, cool.
What's
So
happening there?
okay, so I'm going to turn them over. As you can see, they are browning even
look
more
at that.
now.
Gorgeous color.
And now they're actually,
Yeah.
the sugar is actually now caramelized a little bit. So I'm actually going to let them go. I'm going to turn that pan off now. And I'll push it to the corner, and I'm going to let them finish and hopefully absorb a little bit of that butter.
Yeah. And again, there's the value in using a thick bottom pan is you can turn that pan off and the residual heat is going to keep them nice and warm.
Oh, totally. Okay, cool. Next, I think it's time to put the mushrooms under.
Sure. We have a question from Sean and Kirsty. If we did this dish again in the future, could we use different mushrooms, maybe smaller ones?
So
I think maybe they're referring
to be honest with you,
mushrooms.
so I actually created that recipe initially when I did that recipe the first time, I did it with porcini mushroom, which are even bigger than those. And so yeah, so you basically slice the porcini and you just grill them. With porcini mushroom, which is quite a meaty mushroom, it's very umami. It's so delicious. It's the best actually. But small mushrooms, if you were to use small mushrooms, then I would either leave them whole or cut them in half if they were depending on how tiny they are. But I mean, you can be playful. Cooking is fun. It's not about there's no rules. You can use Japanese mushrooms if you want. Shiitake. You can use. Yeah, you can just use
mushrooms as well. Yeah, I think people need to be more confident when recipes are guidelines. They're not. It's different when you're baking, where it's an exact science, and the amount of raising agent to liquid to solid you need is something that's hard and fast rule. When you're cooking like this, recipes are guidelines. For me, if you fancy throwing some fresh chilies into this, there'd be nothing wrong with that. And I think you need to take those. The recipe is a framework. Provided you're not changing textures, absolutely. you can certainly ad lib and maybe not use herbs de Provence, and you could put some smoked paprika. The world is your oyster, and I think you shouldn't be bound by recipes. There are ideas, and if you have different flavors that you like or flavors you don't like, I think wing it. I don't think provided you get the steak right, provided you get the balance of flavors right. I think the world is your oyster. Oh, we have a contentious question here from Mark Sale. Can a Frenchman cook a steak better than a South African? Nah. I'm going to, before Franck, the last people who ate well-done steak in France were beheaded during the revolution, whereas half of South Africa still likes their meat smoldering. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to, in my book, I think I'm going to have to go with the French way of cooking meat, I'm afraid. What's your opinion, Franck?
I agree with you, Pete. I agree. No, I'm totally with you. Totally, man, of course.
I mean, there's no need to kill the cow twice. Cheers, Franck.
Okay, hey, talking about killing the cow, it's time to sear the ribeye. Okay. So I just want to say this. So I've got the camera on the griddle. But it's important. Yes.
Just to interrupt, before we get to the hero moment, just give us a recap of where we are, so that if people are following that they know where they need to be before the hero goes into the pan.
Okay, cool. So if you look here, you have got the turnips, which are cooked and they have been put aside. They're still in the pan, warm. You got my griddle pan, which is now getting piping hot. The cherry tomatoes have been quartered. I've already decanted my truffle oil and my balsamic vinegar, which I'm going to use to drizzle. The mushrooms are under the grill and they should be there for another few minutes. I'll probably take them off once my meat is searing to one side.
Cool.
I've got the Parmesan shavings, which haven't been shaved yet because I'll do that straight over the salad directly.
Cool, fantastic.
This is it. This is like a 5-element salad. It's super easy. So the time has come to put the meat down on the griddle.
Oh,
so everybody do that. Take your meat, put it down.
There we go. Now, this is baptismal. Now, I'm just going to remind those of our viewers who didn't buy tickets and are not putting their steak in the skillet because, damn, that looks good. Just to remind you that we are going to be doing this every 2 weeks, and you too can join in this cooking by simply going to web tickets and booking your box for the next chef. Webtickets.co.za, and Daily Dish will deliver that entire box of ingredients to your doorstep, and then you will be able to cook along. I understand what it feels like to watch this and not be able to taste it afterwards, and I think that we're missing a trick for those of us who are not cooking along with Franck. Not only are we not going to eat a fabulous meal later, but we also aren't being able to practice and exercise these fantastic tips from clearly what is one of South Africa's top chefs.
Smells so good, guys. So as you can see, I'm leaving that meat on the one side for at least a minute to a minute and a half. So there might be a slight difference between the thickness of my meat and your meat. So I just want to confirm my ribeye was about just under 2 centimeters, or around 2 centimeters. So the guideline for medium rare, if the meat is at room temperature, is about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes on each side. And then we take it off and let it rest for another minute or so.
I don't know about you ladies, but he had me at centimeter.
Look at this. She's a beaut.
Okay, that's an interesting question. Franck, can you suggest game meat to do this with? And can we not do the meat? Oh yes, of course. Could they do this with something else, venison? And how about doing it on the braai?
Absolutely. So definitely yes to that. Like a springbok would be fantastic. Ostrich would be fantastic. Just remember, when you do meat on the braai, you need to have either a very thick piece of meat or a really hot fire to actually sear the meat so that it's caramelized on the outside and medium rare on the inside. So this is something to remember. I find steaks are quite difficult to do on the braai unless they're really thick. And this dish really needs the meat to be medium rare, at least medium, but medium rare. Rare is even better.
Yeah, but you're right. I think
I'm going to take the mushrooms off.
Even like a lamb, like a leg steak would be quite nice, or rump of lamb on fire, and then thin slices would work as well. No, I think you could say, as we said, I think you could substitute the meat definitely. Oh, look at those mushrooms! Wow.
Yeah, the mushrooms are out, so I'm going to turn my oven off. This is good. Mushrooms are out. I'm going to put them next to the turnips, ready for dressing a bit later. The meat has been on this side another 30 seconds, and I'll take it off and I'll just rest it.
Okay, so while Franck is just getting himself
together, we can talk about resting meat because it's one of the most. Everybody's following. I mean, this is we decided for episode 1 to go for a really easy recipe.
So, Franck, you were telling us about resting your meat.
It's very important to. So I'm going to take the meat off now, and then let it breathe a little bit. And then what I want to do is I want to take another plate and just put it over that. And just let that meat rest for a few seconds. Well, for actually, just an interesting guideline, especially for steaks like that. a good guideline is to let the meat rest for half the cooking time. So basically the meat went on for 1.5 minutes on each side. So I'm going to rest it for 1.5 minutes. And that will be, it means to put a plate over or to put a piece of foil over would work as well. All it does is it kind of retains the heat and keeps it warm. It won't cool down. There's a lot of heat going on both sides. And the caramelization is really like pushing those juices towards the center. And unless you allow it to rest and relax a little bit, the minute you slice that meat, if it's too early, you will lose all that juice.
All that juice can go less. Well, look, Franck, just while you're waiting, while the steak is resting and we're getting ready to assemble our final plate, a couple of things to remember, folks. We are also having an Instagram competition. You can pass comments, as many as you like, on how you feel Franck has plated up his dish. But there is wine up for grabs for those of you who post the most fabulous picture of your dish on Instagram. Remember to tag us at hashtag #iCookChannel, and we will judge who is the sexiest plater of Franck's dish. And there'll be a prize on the way to you, a hamper from Haute Espoir. And now, while I mention Haute Espoir, I'm going to have a little sip of wine of this beautiful Gentle Giant that we've been drinking throughout the cooking process. I think it's time to hear a little bit more about Haute Espoir. Fantastic. So we also, not only do we have a competition for the best Instagram photo of Franck's dish, but we also have a lucky prize draw for a lucky ticket holder. But we'll get that a little bit later. Franck, how are we looking out there with plating up the final dish?
Yeah, so we're looking good. I mean, the mushrooms are out, they're still warm, the turnips are still warm, the tomatoes are done, my meat is rested, actually, it's going to be ready to slice. So the next step is to put the rocket. So the rocket, basically, when the rocket came, it was in a little packet, and all I did is I decanted it and I put it in a salad bowl. I actually covered it in a bit of water. It's just a habit of mine too. There's nothing that I hate more than grit, even a little bit of grit in any kind of salad. So even though I know it's been washed, for me, I have to know, and I just give it another wash.
But also, can I also interrupt you there as well? Not only that, is sometimes you get the leaves and they look a little bit lackluster, and when they sit in a bowl of nice ice cold water for about 5 or 10 minutes, you'd be amazed how they come back to life and a nice crisp and sprightly. Great. So,
yeah, completely.
Here we go.
I'm going to do.
Okay. Franck is rising to the plating challenge here, I see. And I see he's going to do a large plate, and he's going to look like he might plate an individual one as well.
Come on, I actually want to win this.
So, Franck, I think you might just have to repeat what you've just said. Okay, so while we're just
because I want to win this.
Okay. Okay, Franck can't see me, so he can't hear me. Okay. Right, Franck, before you get stuck into your dish, if you can hear me, just hold on 2 seconds. I'm just going to talk about a couple of things before we get stuck into the final plating up, and that's not only do we have a lucky ticket holder, but also we need to talk about what you need to do to book again for our next content or our next fabulous chef. But I think before we go to that, I think we have another word from one of our sponsors. Brilliant. Excellent work there. Fantastic. So recapping, we're back in Franck's kitchen. Franck is going to tap his hand on his board if you can hear me. But he's looking super excited about continuing with this dish. And so I see him playing with his rocket, and now we're about to get out cherry tomatoes. And we're going to now put those and garnish the plates quite liberally with our cherry tomatoes. Okay, so what Franck is actually doing now for us is he's going to plate one plate up, and he's going to also do a smaller individual plate because he's heard that there's a competition on, and he doesn't want anybody dissing him live on the internet that his plating looks anything less than sexy. So he's going to do a show plate for us as well as a bigger plate. So now look at those magnificently glazed turnips. That is just flavor waiting to erupt in your mouth. Lovely bitterness, nice and warm, perfect for a winter's evening like tonight. And I think that sugar and that butter and that bitterness from the turnip is exactly what this salad needs to give a nice counterbalance to that very rich ribeye. There we go. Finishing off. Oh yes, and of course, don't waste anything. That lovely butter with the sugar and those turnip juices definitely adding to the flavor of the steak. And now, of course, we're going to slice the steak, remembering to slice across the grain, because you don't want to look at that. If that's not perfectly cooked steak, I do not know what is. That is absolute heaven. For those of you who want it cooked more than that, well, sorry for you. Now, it is this most, as you see, not only is it a sharp knife, but it's an indication of how beautiful and tender that steak is. His knife just glides through it. So, perfect. Now, as you can see, that is when it's sliced beautifully like that, it's going to be more than enough for 4 people. We just lay it over. Look at how perfectly cooked that steak is. Beautifully medium rare, absolutely gorgeous. Now we just lay these on top of the salad like that, just plonk them on there, and just more than enough meat for everyone. And I think it's important to finish off this last bit of plating because you want the salad to be nice and warm. What do you think, Franck?
No, totally. And you know what? What else? Is that, so I'm just giving people a 2 different, have the plate for 1, and you can do 4 of those. So this is actually plate for 1, or this is the remaining 3 people. And yeah, it's actually plenty of food. So now, last, very important to do, almost there. I'm going to put the Parmesan shaving, so you got your...
Franck, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Before you put the cheese on, what about those fabulous mushrooms?
What a good idea. That is a great idea, Pete. Let's put a few mushrooms on this. That's absolutely fantastic idea. Well. This wine is really good, and it's completely getting to us, isn't it? Okay, cool. So mushrooms on. So exactly what you were saying. In terms of quantity, you know, it's quite a. Once you put it all together, there's definitely quite a lot going on in here.
For me, just looking at your individual plate, I have to also say that for me, when I cook at home, I very seldom do individual plates. I prefer big bowls and big platters that people can pass around. It's more that sort of conviviality of the table. I think for me, individually plated food, unless you're doing soup, is for restaurants. Whereas eating at home with family and friends, I like that passing around and tearing the bread and pouring a big jug of dressing around. I think it's far more fun and part of the meal than attending to your own little individual plate.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. Okay, so you have to give people two options. So.
Yeah, so I think just while you're finished with plating up, before we present the final dish, before you finish off with your dressing and your truffle oil, I'd just like to talk to everyone out there about our next date on iCook channel. And that is coming up on the 25th of June with none other than Luke Dale Roberts, where he will be doing his signature and very, very famous beef Wellington. So if you want to partake, those of you who are sated from Franck's dish and want more, and those of you who haven't had a taste of the food and want to tuck in, please go to Web Tickets to book your chance to cook alongside Luke Dale Roberts on the 25th of June. As I say, an opportunity not to be missed, because if Franck's dish is anything to go by, I'm going to cook alongside the next couple of dishes, because I can't believe that I'm not going to get any of that fabulous food this evening.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to actually cook along with Luke's Wellington. I think it's going to be awesome. Okay, so basically, guys, you got your tagliata. It's dished. It's ready to go. All your last little season, which is a little turn of salt, a little bit of the black pepper from the mill, last minute, like this. And then I've got some olive oil. So you need to put a good drizzle of olive oil first. And I say, just to give you a guideline, basically you're looking at about 1/9 tablespoon per person onto the tagliata. And then I need some also of my individual one. Then we need some balsamic vinegar. Basically everything that was given to you in the box must be used. So it's because balsamic is so sweet, it's sweet and tangy at the same time. So it's really important to put quite a lot. It's got that lovely, almost like a umami kind of vibe. And then I'm using some on my individual one as well. Like that. And then finally, last but not least, the truffle oil, which came in a little sachet. So you just basically drizzle the truffle oil everywhere, make sure it touches everything. And then the last little bit I'll put on this one. Oh, and I'm actually I can't let this go to waste, I'm gonna eat it.
It's surprising you don't actually need that much truffle oil. It's almost like a hint, just so you get that sensual waft of the truffles. You don't actually need much of that truffle oil. So before we say goodbye, before we tuck into your fabulous dish, I'd just like to remind people, don't forget our Instagram competition. Send in photos of your version of Franck's Ribeye Tagliata and don't forget to tag us at #iCookChannel. And there is a fantastic case of Haute Espoir wines waiting for what we decide is the favorite picture. But we do have a lucky ticket winner who's going to win actually a fantastic case of the Grendel choice wines. And there we go. Ticket number 25, Julie Bennett. Oh, Nurcook, Franck, one of your neighbors, has just won a fantastic prize. How'd you like them onions?
I don't think it's an accident. I think this is rigged. There's no way.
Well, folks, I can say no more than thank you very much, Franck, for spending time with us in your kitchen on iCook channel. To those of you watching, to those of you cooking, I hope that your meal looks anywhere as delicious as Franck's do. To those of you who are watching without a box, remember, you too can join into this next time with Luke Dale Roberts on the 25th of June. And I think, Franck, I'd like to raise a glass and say thank you very much. It's been stunning watching you cook. Adieu. And thank you very much, people. Good night.
Cheers, buddy. Bye, guys. This was lovely.